Hi guys, so I'm here today to do a bit of a listy video, which I love watching and also just love chatting about lists, so I hope you guys do, or like listening to people chat about lists as much as I do. So this list is a stack of I think 11 books I've owned for the longest but haven't read. I don't think I've owned any of these unread for less than 4 years. Some of them are probably closer to 6 years, which is embarrassing. I didn't really start seriously collecting books as an adult until about 6 years ago when I started the channel, so I don't tend to have books from like before that, because when I was younger I was a library user and therefore didn't collect books. So the reason I've been assessing my bookshelves a lot more is because we're going to be moving in I think like 4 to 6 weeks, not quite sure. And so I have been looking at my shelves and thinking about the fact that they all need to be, you know, dismantled and all those books need to be carried, and we live in a flat at the moment on the third floor, and they've all got to be carried downstairs, and then we're moving to a house and I'm planning to have like a library slash study room upstairs. They've all got to be carried upstairs again, so yeah. And if you've watched my channel for any length of time, you'll know that over the last couple of years I've seriously reduced my unread book stack. I had about 280 books at one point and I've reduced that to around 160, and that isn't because I've been reading faster than I've been accumulating, it's because I've been unhauling quite viciously, and I just kept like making massive stacks of books that I didn't want to keep. And so the ones I have left now are the ones that have survived all those culls. Like, you know, seeing as I've done this, you know, probably at least once a year, and I've had these books for at least 4 years, that means they've survived at least 4 massive culls. So that makes me think that I want to keep them. But what I thought I'd do is show you guys them, have a little chat about them, why I originally picked them up, why I've been holding on to them, and hope that you guys will convince me either way. In my mind, what I like the idea of is moving with around 100, maybe I'd allow 120 unread books. I say allow, if it ends up staying with 160, I'm not going to get rid of books I want to read, but I'd like to be able to reduce this to closer to 100, so that I know I'm definitely taking books I'm super excited about, and you know, it makes me closer to my goal of only owning around 50 unread books. And now's the perfect time to do it, like I said, because we're moving, and it means I can gradually donate the books in the next few weeks leading up to the move. So I've just gone through my shelves and pulled off the ones I know have been sitting there gathering dust for a long time. If you can see all these empty spaces behind me, it's because that's where lots of the books I'd owned for longer lived. So yeah. So I have one non-fiction and the rest is all fiction. The reason I don't have a lot of non-fiction is because when I first started the channel a long time ago, like 6 years ago, I didn't read much non-fiction. And so a lot of the non-fiction I have unread on my shelves tends to be newer acquisitions, and also because I have less non-fiction, I tend to like get through them at a faster rate because there's less of them to get through. Does that make sense? I think so. So I only have one non-fiction that I've owned for a really long time, and that is The Unspeakable and Other Subjects of Discussion by Meghan Daum. So, or Daum? I think it's Daum. This is an essay collection, and I heard Nicola over at the channel Robotnik recommend this one, like I said, years ago, and she reads lots of essay collections and I always really liked her recommendations, and so I decided to pick this one up. And yeah, I don't know, do you know, for the first couple of years of owning it, it was one of those books I thought about every month and thought I want to try and read it this month, and I think because I wasn't used to reading non-fiction I didn't naturally reach for it, and now I think it's become one of those books that I've had for so long and haven't naturally reached for. It's become something that I never really think to reach for. And also I guess I get slightly worried about non-fiction books. They date a lot quicker than fiction, and so I think I have this in the back of my mind that they could have dated. But I don't think this is the sort of essay collection that could date, because it says The Unspeakable contends with parental death, the decision not to have children and more. A new set of challenges tackled by a writer at her best, investigated in the same uncompromising voice that made Daum one of the most engaging thinkers writing today. So it sounds like they're more personal essays, and therefore that sort of thing shouldn't date. But let me know if you've read this. I'd really like to know your thoughts. I think this could be quite like unflinchingly honest. I know the first essay I started reading was about her mother dying, and she was quite cavalier about the whole thing, which, I mean, I'm on board with brutal honesty in all forms, you know, unless you're actually being cruel to someone, then not so much. But yeah, so let me know, have you read this one? Do you think I should pick it up soon? Do you think I should keep it? Then I have 2 middle grade books. Quite a few years ago now, I went on a sort of big binge and I bought loads of middle grade books, and to be honest, loads of them didn't survive the cull. As you know, when I used to do this thing, which I really try not to do now, where I'd get into a niche, be that middle grade or books set on islands or Canadian books or books based on fairy tales, all these different things, and I'd think, okay, I need 20 of them right now. And then I'd go and buy loads and then realise very quickly that you don't want to read all 20 of those in a row. In fact, you probably only want to read around 5 of those a year because, you know, I like variety. And what happens is you end up reading some of them and the others sit there, and bad times. So yeah, I try not to do that anymore, but I used to do that, and that's why I had a lot of middle grade. I read some of them, decided not to keep some of them because I just wasn't as excited anymore, and, you know, just had read more reviews that weren't so great. But these are 2 that survived all of that. So the first one is The Snow Merchant by Sam Gayton. I think a big part of the reason this has survived all those culls is because it's illustrated by Chris Riddell, who's one of my favourite illustrators, and it's glorious. And I always mean to read this around Christmas because this is about a little girl called Letty Peppercorn, which is the cute name, and she lives on a house on stilts near the windswept coast of Albion, which just sounds delightful, and a snow merchant arrives and nobody's ever heard of snow, and so it's this like magical thing. And every year I mean to read it around Christmas because I'm not actually a fan of Christmassy books, but reading a book that's snow themed around Christmas I think could be really nice. So maybe this will be the year, but let me know if you've read that one. And then the other one is The Year of Shadows by Claire Legrand. I think she's more well known for the Cavendish Home for Boys and Girls, which is what I was interested in as well, but I ended up picking up this one. So this is about a little girl who lives with her neglectful father after her mother's left, and he runs a failing orchestra, and he's moved her and her grandmother into the city's dark, broken down music hall to save money. She has one friend who's this stray cat, and she starts to see ghosts, and it's about the story from there and the relationships she develops with all these ghosts in this spooky music hall. So yeah, I always mean to read this one around October and don't. So yeah, again, have you read it? This one, I do have an excuse for this one actually. No, I was then going to say I don't have an excuse. I do. Is Mariana by Monica Dickens. So I read Winds of Heaven by Monica Dickens and loved it. I thought it was just comforting joy, and if you just want to read something twee and comforting that has lots of mentions of really British snacks like crumpets and scones and jam and all those sorts of things, then you should read it. And this is her other book, which is one of the Persephone like top 10, the bestsellers, which has the actual like colourful covers. And I've heard loads of people talk about this one, and I always thought it'd be something I'd really love because it's about a young girl and it's a coming of age story. But I actually started the first chapter or so. To be fair, I had owned it for a couple of years at that point, but yeah, I didn't love it. She wasn't a young girl. She seemed to be married and her husband was away fighting at war, and she was listening to the radio, and I just didn't feel that hooked. But I have since heard some people who did really love it say that the first chapters aren't as good, and I don't know if it ends up going back, and maybe she starts to look back on how she got to that point of how she met her husband and when she was much younger and all those sorts of things. So yeah, let me know. It's bad because I gave Winds of Heaven I think 5 stars, and yeah, I probably will really love this one. So okay, so these next few are the ones that I am quite leaning towards not keeping unless people really convince me, and that's because in the whole time I've owned them, I've never once even considered picking them up. Like with a lot of these I've been like, no, I really need to read them, like it'd be really nice to read them at this time of year. And with these 3, I don't know, I just don't get the pull towards reading them, which is bizarre because obviously I do really like the sound of them. They've survived all these culls. So one of them is The Panopticon by Jenny Fagan. Now when I first bought this, I kept putting it on loads of TBRs for about a year I think. And then I sort of forgot about it and it languished on my shelves. And then more recently, I've been looking at the reviews and they're quite mixed, and there's quite a few people whose opinions I trust who just said this was like an alright book and nothing particularly special. But I have read her other book, which was The Sunlight Pilgrims, which, like looking back, was just like a good read, like a 3-star read. So it's not necessarily worth keeping one of her previous novels for, but I did like the sound of this one. And this follows a 15-year-old girl who is being taken in the back of a police car to a place called the Panopticon, which is a home for chronic young offenders where the social workers are as suspicious as its residents, but she can't remember how she got there. She has blood all over her school uniform and she has no memory of what's happened. And you follow her from there, and I seem to remember, yeah, this is told in like dialect, I think, because it's Scottish, so yeah, it looks like it's like phonetically spelt in the way she speaks, which is exciting. But yeah, I've had mixed things, and I've even had some people say to me like it's not necessarily a book worth holding on to, so let me know if you've read it. And then I have two by the same author. I picked these up secondhand, I think for £1 each in a secondhand bookshop, and I thought they were super pretty. I love the editions and I really do like the sound of them, but I've just never picked them up. So this is Our Spoons Came from Woolworths, and this is Sisters by a River by Barbara Comyns. These are both in beautiful Virago editions. Yeah, and I feel like I could really like Barbara Comyns, but I've just never read them. So this is about 5 sisters who are born on the banks of the River Avon, and it says that tragedy strikes the family, and before long the furniture is being auctioned off and the sisters are dispersed among relatives. And it sounds a bit gothic on the back, which obviously is something I love, so why haven't I read this? Let me know why you think I should or should not. This one I'm not as intrigued by. This is about a young woman who's 21 and she's hastily married to a young painter, and then she meets this artist model and they're all a bit like unsure how to deal with life, and so Sophia takes up with this much older man and has this affair. Yeah, to be fair, that doesn't sound particularly interesting to me, but I really like the sound of this one. So yeah, and they're very pretty, which is probably played a big part in my decision to keep them, not gonna lie. The next two I think I'm probably going to get the most comments about because they are really well-known buzzy books that loads of people have loved, and yeah, I picked them both up secondhand. I think a big part of the reason I'm not rushed to read either of these is because I know they're really well loved and I feel like they could be really solid 4-star reads, but I've never been super excited to read them and think I could give them 5-star reads. And I think I'm always slightly more intrigued by books that I haven't heard loads about. Yeah, I don't know why, I think a lot of us are like that. So yeah, I've never picked them up. One of them is The Vegetarian by Han Kang, translated by Deborah Smith. I have no excuse. I have read Human Acts, really enjoyed it, and obviously so many people have raved about this. I've heard lots of people didn't enjoy it as well. To be honest, I am going to keep this one. It's more that I just don't know why I haven't read it yet. No excuse. So I don't think I need to say much more about that. Everyone knows what that one's about. And then this one I also picked up secondhand, and it's The Lowland by Jhumpa Lahiri. I haven't read any Jhumpa Lahiri, and I hear people just absolutely rave about her short story collections and novels alike, and this is the only book of hers I own. And like I said, I saw it in a secondhand shop and thought it was beautiful, so I picked it up. And from the point of picking it up, I've just never really felt like reading it. I think that's a big thing for me. If I buy a book, like actively through choice, I pursue it, I find it online or I go in a bookshop seeking it out, then I'm way more likely to read it. Whereas with these last few, I picked them all up just on a whim in a secondhand shop, and then I think I feel way less inclined to rush to read them because maybe I spent less money on them and they weren't like actively pursued. Does that make sense? It's probably a really poor excuse. Now these 3 were actively pursued and they cost quite a bit and they were probably quite hard to find. So yeah, all excuses gone. And these are all sort of magical realist fairy tale inspired stories. So I have read, actually now I'm looking at them, I've read books by all 3 of these authors and enjoyed them. So yeah, the first one is When Fox is 1,000 by Larissa Lee. I actually started this a couple of years ago and never got very far, but I enjoyed what I read. This is a retelling of an ancient Chinese folktale about foxes, and this is set in contemporary Vancouver, and it says part history, part fairy tale, part urban discontent. This delightful novel cracks open all preconceptions about Asian women, gender, sexuality, family, faith and the flow of time. So yeah, it sounds amazing. It was originally published in 1995 and then it was reissued in this edition. I think she's had a new novel come out recently which I really like the sound of, but I'm not letting myself buy any more of her books until I've read this one that I've owned for about 5 years. So yeah, let me know if you read it. And the next one is The Foxwoman by Kij Johnson. I've read all of her books bar this one, so I really loved Fudoki, which is like the other one in this set, and I also really love the short story collection At the Mouth of the River of Bees. This is also a retelling of the ancient Chinese folktale of the foxes, and again I started reading this one and enjoyed it and just have never got around to reading it. And I think it's the same old thing of like having read an author's previous works and really enjoyed them. I don't know, that's a lie. With some authors I feel a massive need to rush and read their other books, but I don't know why I haven't with this. Maybe that's telling, but I haven't read it and I really should have done, and it's been years since I've read. Well, actually I read a novella she had come out a couple of years ago and really didn't enjoy it, but it was a retelling of, was it an Edgar Allan Poe story? I can't remember, and I really didn't enjoy it, but I've always enjoyed her like longer length stuff. And then this last one I also started, and I did get about 50 pages into this a few years ago, and then I didn't carry on. And this is In the Night Garden, the first book in the Orphan's Tales by Cathrynne and Valente. This is a duology and it's based on 1001 Arabian Nights. So you start in this garden. Oh, I got 57 pages in, there's still a bookmark after all these years. So you start in a garden, and I can't remember, maybe a young girl tells a story to a young boy, and then within each story she tells there is a character who becomes the storyteller, and they then tell another story, and it's like, you know, it just keeps going and going and going. And yeah, it's beautifully written. I was enjoying it. I don't know why I didn't carry on. I used to be really into books like these three. I used to read lots of magical realist books, lots of fairy tale retellings, and then I just got a lot less into them, and I became a much more, I've always been a reader really focused on strong character development, but I think I became even more fixated on that, and books like this don't, like, character development isn't really their focus. The focus is much more on the beautiful language and the imagery, which I love, but I'm not always in the right mood for anymore. I used to just always want to read stuff like that, and now I always feel like I have to just be in the right frame of mind, and I never feel like I am. So I think I should just try and read one of them, and then hopefully I would get in that frame of mind, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think people will be less likely to have read these, so if you have, I'll be really you know, intrigued to hear what you thought and whether you think they are worth keeping and transporting with me. And actually they've been published on really like heavy duty paper, they're really high quality, so they're quite heavy, so they'll take up some considerable weight. So those are all the books I wanted to show you guys, and like I said, they've survived lots of culls and I've kept them, so I've obviously, you know, wanted to read them. But if you think there's any that are not worth taking, I would like to know, because I would like to take less books with me. I have an awful lot to carry and I'm not looking forward to doing that, in all honesty. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.